It's Saturday the 4th of March 2017, and you are listening to the Paul Clark podcast. So I've not long woken up, and I thought the first thing I will do today is to do a podcast. Do a podcast for you lovely people. First of all, because it'll wake me up, get the blood flowing, get the blood pumping, and secondly, there's just a lot of things that I want to say today. There's a lot of things I want to get off my chest, and in particular, one of these subjects is that of the BBC. The BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and how the BBC is funded through the licence fee. Now, I was inspired, I suppose, to do this particular subject on the podcast by another podcaster, someone that I listen to, the Nick Margerison podcast. Go and check it out. Great broadcaster, great podcaster. I've listened to Nick for years. Very talented guy, and he was talking in his latest podcast about the BBC and the way it's funded, the licence fee. And for those of you that maybe aren't as aware, maybe some of my American listeners, the BBC, and of course the BBC is known all around the world. You know, it's looked at quite highly. You know, people look up to the BBC in other countries, and they look at it as a staple of quality and high-end broadcasting. But it's funded by the licence fee. And the licence fee is basically effectively a tax, is what it is. It's a tax, which if you want to watch television in this country, not just the BBC, but if you want to watch other programmes on other channels, you have to pay the licence fee. You have to have a licence to have a television in this country. And huge swathes of the money, of the tax, as it were, that you have to pay to have a licence to watch television goes towards the BBC and funding the BBC. Now, just a year or so ago, you know, you would hear me say, that's great. You know, I think you get your money's worth. I think, you know, that a universe without the BBC scarcely bears thinking about. The idea that maybe we could lose the BBC, the idea that the BBC could go away because people stop funding it, people refuse to pay the licence fee, or the licence fee is just generally abolished, is too much of a terrifying thing to even contemplate. No way. You know, the BBC's great. Let's fund it. But I have a blind spot, you know, to the BBC. And it's called Doctor Who. And I'm a very easily led person, okay? You know, when I get behind something, when I get passionate about something, the problem, my weakness, and it can also be my strength, but my weakness can be my passion, and it can lead me to follow things, sometimes blindly without question. And if you do something, if you make something that I like, and makes me happy, and makes me smile, and makes me feel good, and something that I like, something that I love, the failings of the people who make that thing, the failings of the organisation that produced that product, kind of just fades into the background for me, really. And I don't really consider. And as long as the BBC continue to make Doctor Who, and particularly Doctor Who under the last 6, 7, 8 years, under the reign of head writer and executive producer Stephen Moffat, you continue to do that, I'm putty in your hands, basically. You know, I'll roll over and let you tickle my tummy. Really, you know, I'm very easily pleased. And as I say, it's both a strength and a weakness, I believe. And it's something that I think maybe I one day will need to address, and maybe will need just to rein in a little bit. And the world that we live in now is almost very tribal, isn't it? In that, you're either left-wing or right-wing, you're either Republican or Democrat, you're either pro or anti-Trump. And it's very one-sided, the world we live in now. And I think I've been that way for years with the BBC. You're either with the BBC or against the BBC. Well, for many years, I was actually against the BBC, I suppose. But I don't really think I actually ever truly knew why. And then they started to produce shows that I liked. They brought Doctor Who back. They started producing other things that I quite enjoyed. So I instantly became putty in their hands. And I started to roll over and let them tickle my tummy. And as long as they were feeding me and keeping me well fed with the programmes that I liked, I wasn't going to question them. I wasn't going to question the way the BBC is funded. I wasn't going to question the licence fee. But then 2016 reared its ugly head. And Brexit happened. And Trump happened. And the BBC, with their News 24 outlet, were covering pretty much nothing else. And these two big stories, right, Brexit and the presidential election of Donald Trump, we were told, not just by the BBC, to be fair. I mean, CNN was saying it, MSNBC was saying it, CBS was saying it, even, other news outlets in this country were saying that Trump can't win, and that, it will be a vote to remain in the European Union. ITV was saying it, Sky News was saying it, but the BBC is the big one in this country. The BBC pretty much has the monopoly on news and journalism. And all the time you would be turning on the TV, and all you would see every day was, can't possibly happen. We're not going to leave. People aren't going to vote to Brexit, the European Union. And Donald Trump, he will not win. The polls, the facts, the statistics, they all show that he can't possibly win. He cannot win the presidency. And then, of course, we voted Brexit, and Donald Trump wins. And you have to sit there, don't you? And you have to kind of go, okay, you sort of sit contemplating and sort of stroking your chin and thinking, okay, well, we were told by the organisation, we were told by an organisation that is supposed to represent the people of the United Kingdom. The people who, regardless of class, regardless of wealth and status, the one thing we all have in common is that we all pay a licence fee. And that doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, working class, middle class, we all pay a licence fee. We all pay a licence fee. It's something we all have in common. And when you're paying for an organisation that is supposed to represent the entire country, but turns out that really all it represents is the London metropolitan liberal elites, the people who thought that the European Union, think the European Union is a great, wonderful thing. And the people who think that mass immigration, unfiltered, unchecked, is a wonderful thing. And that we should be a lot more tolerant and respectful to other people and people's cultures and backgrounds and different diversities. When you're being told that, when you're being preached at, when you're being told that vote Remain, Brexit, it's a wasted vote because it's not going to happen. And when your state broadcaster, who is supposed to represent everybody around the country, but only represents the London liberal elite, you sort of think, hang on a minute, why are we paying the licence fee then? Because you're not representing the views, obviously, of a huge chunk of this country. Because a huge chunk, a vast swathes of people The vast majority of people in this country voted Brexit. And we all pay the licence fee for the BBC to tell us that that's not a good thing, that it's stupid, that we shouldn't have voted Brexit. And they regularly put on people on on their, they regularly talk and interview people on the news that say things like, well, the British people were ill-informed. They didn't know what they were voting for. I did. I knew what I was voting for. My mum did. My dad did. The people that I know, my neighbours, the people I see every day who, you talk about these things, they all seem pretty clued up as to what they were voting for. But if the state broadcaster is becoming a platform for people to basically say that everyone that voted Brexit is stupid, ill-informed, didn't really know what they were voting for, you sort of think, well, I don't really want to fund that organisation then anymore. I don't think, maybe I don't want to fund the BBC. And those rose-tinted spectacles start to come off. And yeah, they produce television shows that I like. But I'm thinking, yeah, but that's all fine and dandy. But I could get, I can easily find another show. A lot of the shows right now that I'm currently into aren't even British. They're all American. They're not coming from the BBC. So I'm kind of thinking, what am I paying a licence fee for? They only produce one show that I like. And their politics, their views, don't really obviously reflect the vast majority of this country. The same with Trump. The way the BBC go on, everyone hates Donald Trump in the United Kingdom. Well, my friend who lives up north, I know she doesn't hate Donald Trump. And a lot of people in my community, in my local area, I mean, look, they're probably not as passionate about Trump as I am, but they certainly don't have the vitriol towards him that the media like to spew out. I've got another friend, and she turned around to me once and she said, yeah, I don't see the problem with this guy. He's talking sense. Bringing back jobs, making America great again, low immigration, tighten up the borders. Sounds good to me. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds good to me, but not to the BBC and the London liberal elite. But you kind of think, well, why am I paying the licence fee then? If the BBC isn't representing the views of the vast majority of this country, then why am I paying the licence fee? And I just really think that the problem resides in the BBC's news coverage. A huge chunk of the funds generated by the licence fee goes towards News 24. And I'm not happy about that, because those people are biased. Those people are the definition, the antithesis of fake news. And I don't think I'm willing to fund them any longer. So, but what do you think? I mean, are you happy to fund the BBC, fund an organisation that says one thing to you, and then means a completely different thing in reality? They say to you, Donald Trump can't possibly win. I would love to, these polls that the likes of Evan Davis would be reading out on BBC Newsnight and saying, Donald Trump can't possibly win. Look at the polls. The polls show, it's a shoo-in for Hillary. I'd love to have seen the real polls, not the fake ones they were reading out, because they were obviously fake. Because they got it wrong. They got it spectacularly wrong. You don't just get the two biggest things that have ever happened in a generation wrong, Brexit and Trump, without there being something askew, something amiss within your organisation. And then you have to think, am I willing to continue to fund that organisation out of my own pocket? Comment below, let me know what you think. You've been listening to the Paul Clark Podcast.